4 immortal beings colonized planets, built a slave caste, corrupted an entire army, and buried a weapon of mass destruction inside the earth. Then a cartoon told their story and asked you to forgive them. That is the summary. That is the whole thing, compressed into 2 sentences. And if you had never watched Steven Universe, you would read those words and think they described a horror story. You would picture something dark and unflinching, something designed to make you uncomfortable. You would not picture bright colours, musical numbers, a boy with a shield, and a gentle smile. But that is exactly where this story lives. It lives in the gap between what the Diamonds did and how the show asks you to feel about it. And that gap is enormous. It stretches across 160 episodes, a movie, an epilogue series, and years of fan debate that still has not settled. Because the question at the centre of Steven Universe is not whether the Diamonds are villains. The show answers that early and often. The question is whether they are forgivable. And the show answers that too, but not everyone agrees with the answer it gives. So tonight we are going to do something simple. We are going to go through every crime the Diamond Authority committed across the full run of the series, not just the dramatic ones, not just the ones that get discussed in video essays and forum threads. All of them, the structural ones, the quiet ones, the ones baked so deeply into homeworld society that the characters themselves do not recognize them as crimes. We are going to lay them out one after another, and we are going to sit with what they actually mean. And the thesis here is not complicated. The Diamonds are not cartoon villains. They are a system, and systems do not need to be cruel on purpose to be devastating. A system can shatter thousands and call it order. A system can drain a planet dry and call it progress. A system can erase individuality entirely and call it purpose. The Diamonds do all of these things, and they do them not because they are evil in the way a moustache-twirling antagonist is evil, but because they built a world where these things are simply how things work. The cruelty is the default. The cruelty is the infrastructure. This is Futuro Channel, by the way. If you are new here, welcome. If you are trying to fall asleep, you are in the right place. This will take a while. Get comfortable. Let us start at the foundation. Before the kindergartens, before the colonization, before the corruption and the shattering, and the thousands of years of war, there is the caste. The caste is where everything begins. It is the original crime, the one from which every other crime flows. And it is so thoroughly woven into the fabric of Homeworld that most gems do not even have the language to question it. Here is how it works. On Homeworld, every gem is made for a specific purpose. That purpose is determined before they emerge from the ground. A ruby is a soldier, a sapphire is an aristocratic seer, a pearl is a servant, a bismuth is a builder. There is no mobility, no aspiration, no concept of becoming something other than what you were made to be. You emerge. You are told what you are, and you do that thing for the rest of your existence, which, for a gem, could be thousands of years, tens of thousands. The sentence is not just rigid, it is eternal, and the show does not reveal this all at once. It lets you piece it together over time, the way you piece together the rules of any unfamiliar society. Early episodes give you fragments. You see the crystal gems and you assume they are representative. They have personalities, relationships, autonomy, humour. They argue, they grow, they make choices. It is easy to forget in those early seasons that they are the exception. They are the ones who left. They are the ones who fought a war specifically to escape the system that every other gem still lives inside. The first time the show really forces you to confront what Homeworld means for ordinary gems is through Peridot. When Peridot arrives on Earth, she is an antagonist. She is clinical, dismissive, and utterly certain of her own framework. But as she spends more time with the crystal gems, something starts to crack. Not her loyalty exactly, her categories. She begins to encounter things that do not fit into the slots Homeworld gave her. And one of the most revealing moments comes in the episode Back to the Barn, which aired on October 8th, 2015. In that episode, Peridot and Pearl need to work together to build something. And Peridot is genuinely confused by the idea that Pearl would have engineering knowledge, because on Homeworld, pearls do not build things. Pearls do not think things. Pearls stand next to their owner and look pretty and hold things and are quiet. Peridot says it plainly. She explains that pearls are made to order. They are servants. They are accessories. The word she uses, functionally, is property. And she does not say this with malice. That is the part that matters. She does not say it to be cruel. She says it the way you would say that a hammer is for hammering. It is simply a fact of her world. Pearls are objects. Everyone knows this. And Pearl's reaction is not explosive. It is quiet, and it is devastating. Because Pearl has spent thousands of years on Earth, fighting, building, strategizing, loving, grieving. She has become one of the most competent and complex beings on the planet. And here is this gem from Homeworld casually explaining that back home, none of that would matter. Back home, she would still be someone's accessory. Back home, she would still hear the phrase that dismisses her existence with practiced indifference. That will be all. 2 claps, and the pearl leaves. That is the interaction. That is the full range of acknowledgement a pearl receives from her diamond. That will be all. You are finished being visible now. Go stand somewhere out of the way. Think about that phrase for a moment. That will be all. It is not aggressive. It is not shouted. It is delivered calmly, even gently, the way you might dismiss a notification on your phone. And that calm is the violence. The calm says that this interaction, this entire being, does not warrant emotional engagement. You do not yell at furniture. You do not argue with a decorative object. You simply indicate that you are done with it, and it removes itself from your attention. That will be all. The phrase itself is a crime, compressed into 4 words. And then there are the off-colours. If the caste system is the original crime, the off-colours are its most visible victims. Off-colours are gems who emerged wrong. They came out of the ground with defects, mutations, unexpected traits. A rutile that is conjoined. A rhodonite that is a fusion of a ruby and a pearl. 2 castes that should never interact as equals, let alone merge. A Padparadscha sapphire, whose visions see the past instead of the future. On Homeworld, these gems are not rehabilitated or reassigned. They are hunted. The show introduces shattering robonoids, automated machines whose sole purpose is to find and destroy defective gems. Not capture, not contain, destroy. Homeworld built robots specifically to murder its own citizens for the crime of existing incorrectly. Let that settle. A civilization so committed to its caste, so invested in the idea that every gem must be exactly what it was designed to be, that it automates the execution of anyone who deviates. There is no trial, there is no appeal, there is a robot, and there is shattering. The system does not even need a person to pull the trigger. It runs on its own. It finds the imperfect and it eliminates them, and it does this constantly, quietly, in the background, while the rest of Homeworld carries on with its rigid, ordered existence. And then there is fusion. This might be the crime that the show explores most thoroughly, because it is the crime that produces one of the show's most important characters, Garnet. Garnet is a fusion of ruby and sapphire, and their origin story is told in the episode The Answer, which aired on January 4th, 2016. It is framed as a fairy tale, soft and romantic, and it is genuinely beautiful. But inside that beauty is something horrifying. Here is what happens. Ruby is a common soldier, assigned to guard Sapphire during a diplomatic event at Blue Diamond's court. Sapphire is an aristocrat, a rare gem with the ability to see the future. They are from completely different strata of the caste. They should never interact beyond Ruby standing in front of Sapphire to protect her. But when an attack happens, Ruby instinctively grabs Sapphire to shield her, and they accidentally fuse. They become something new, something that is neither Ruby nor Sapphire, something that Homeworld has no category for. And Blue Diamond's reaction is immediate. She does not pause to consider what has happened. She does not ask questions. She does not show curiosity or even confusion. She sentences Ruby to shattering, right there, on the spot. A ruby, a soldier who did her job, who protected the gem she was assigned to protect, is condemned to death because the method of protection resulted in an unsanctioned fusion. The crime is not that Ruby failed. The crime is that Ruby, for one brief moment, became something she was not designed to be. She crossed a boundary. She mixed castes. She suggested, through her very existence in that fused form, that the categories might not be absolute, and that is intolerable. That is the one thing the system cannot absorb. Not failure, not disobedience, not even violence. The system can handle all of those things. What it cannot handle is the suggestion that its categories are arbitrary. Because if a ruby can fuse with a sapphire and become something functional, something beautiful, something stable, then the entire premise of the caste collapses. If gems can be more than what they were made for, then the act of making them for a specific purpose becomes not order, but imprisonment. And if it is imprisonment, then the diamonds are not leaders, they are wardens. Blue Diamond does not think through any of this, of course. She does not need to. The reaction is automatic. Fusion between different gem types is wrong. The punishment is shattering. There is no deliberation because the rules were written long before this moment, and the rules do not require justification. They simply exist, the way gravity exists, the way the caste exists, the way everything on Homeworld exists, as though it could not be otherwise. This is the foundational crime, not a specific act of violence, but a worldview. The belief that there is a correct way to exist and that deviation from that way is punishable by death. Everything else the diamonds do, every planet they drain, every army they corrupt, every rebellion they crush, flows from this single premise. There is a correct way to be a gem. The diamonds decide what that way is, and if you do not fit, you are broken, and broken things get discarded. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Now, the caste is the framework. It is the operating system, but a caste system, on its own, is static. It organizes a society, but it does not expand one. For expansion, you need something else. You need a machine. On Homeworld, that machine is called a kindergarten. And understanding how kindergartens work is essential to understanding the scale of what the diamonds have done. Because kindergartens are not weapons. They are not acts of war. They are infrastructure. They are the ordinary, unremarkable, bureaucratic process by which Homeworld grows its population, and that process happens to involve the complete destruction of every planet it touches. Here is how it works. Gems are not born, they are grown. A kindergarten is a site, usually on a colonized planet, where gem seeds are injected into the earth. Those seeds draw on the planet's resources, its minerals, its energy, its life force, everything the planet has, and they use those resources to form new gems. When the gems emerge, they leave behind holes in the rock face, person-shaped cavities that mark the spot where a living planet became a dead one. Because the process does not just take from the planet, it takes everything. The soil, the water, the atmosphere, the organic life, all of it gets drained to fuel the production of new gems. The kindergarten does not coexist with the planet, it replaces it. The show reveals this gradually, but the first major look at what a kindergarten really means comes in the episode On the Run, which aired on February 5th, 2015, as the 40th episode of Season 1. In that episode, Stephen and Amethyst visit the prime kindergarten on Earth, and what they find is a canyon. A vast, barren, lifeless canyon, riddled with holes in the rock walls. There is no vegetation, there is no water, there is no sound. It is not ruined in the way a battlefield is ruined, with scars and debris that suggest violence. It is empty in a deeper way. It is empty the way a husk is empty. The planet was not destroyed here, it was consumed, and Amethyst was made here. That is the emotional core of the episode. Amethyst, this character you have grown to love, this loud, funny, chaotic gem who eats food she does not need to eat and watches television and makes jokes. She came from this dead place. She emerged from one of those holes in the rock. She is, in a very literal sense, made from the death of the earth. The resources that should have become forests, rivers, ecosystems, animals, they became her instead. And she knows this. She has always known this, and it has been eating at her for thousands of years. The show handles this with remarkable, subtlety. Amethyst does not deliver a monologue about ecological destruction. She does not frame her anguish in political terms. She simply looks at the place where she was made and feels wrong. She feels like a mistake. She feels like the evidence of something terrible, and she is not wrong. She is not a mistake as a person, but the process that made her is monstrous. The process that made her treated an entire planet as raw material. And this is just one kindergarten on one planet. The show makes clear that Homeworld has done this across the galaxy, dozens of worlds, hundreds possibly, each one selected, each one hollowed out, each one converted from a living ecosystem into a gem production facility, and then abandoned once the resources run out. The diamonds do not stay on the planets they colonize. They do not build civilizations on them. They extract what they need and move on. The planets are not conquered territories, they are mines. This is what makes the colonization different from the typical alien invasion narrative. The diamonds are not trying to rule the galaxy. They are not imposing their culture on other species out of some belief in superiority, though they certainly believe they are superior. They are running a production cycle. They need more gems. More gems require more resources. More resources require more planets. More planets require more colonization. And the cycle feeds itself, because more gems mean more demand for structure, which means more need for expansion, which means more kindergartens, which means more dead worlds. It is not conquest. It is industry, and industry does not require malice. That is the thing the show understands so clearly. The diamonds do not sit on their thrones and cackle about the planets they are destroying. They probably do not think about those planets at all, any more than you think about the mine that produced the metal in your phone. The destruction is abstract. It is a line item. It is the cost of doing business, and the business is perpetuation. The diamonds expand because expansion is what they do. It is their purpose, the purpose they assign themselves, and stopping would require them to ask a question they have never asked. Why? Why do we need more gems? Why do we need more planets? Why do we need to grow? The machine runs because stopping it would require questioning why it was built, and the diamonds are not in the habit of questioning anything. The beta kindergarten makes this even clearer. While the prime kindergarten was a planned, orderly operation, the beta kindergarten was rushed. It was built during the war against the crystal gems, hastily thrown together because Homeworld needed soldiers fast. The holes in the beta kindergarten are uneven, poorly spaced, some of them at wrong angles. The gems that emerged from it were considered defective by Homeworld standards. Jasper, who came from the beta kindergarten, is the exception, a perfect gem from an imperfect site, and she carries that contradiction like a wound for the entire series. But the beta kindergarten reveals something important about how the diamonds think. Even in the middle of a war, even when the rebellion is threatening their control of the planet, the response is not to fight differently. The response is to produce more. More gems, more soldiers, more bodies to throw at the problem. The kindergarten is always the answer. The machine is always the solution. You do not adapt, you do not negotiate, you do not reconsider. You build another kindergarten and you make more gems and you keep going, because that is what the machine does. And the gems that come out wrong, the ones from the rushed beta site, the ones who are not quite right by Homeworld standards, they get to carry the shame of that forever. They get to be less than. They get to know for the rest of their very long lives that they were made in a hurry from a place that was not good enough, and that this makes them not good enough. The caste system finds them even in the method of their creation. Even the way they are born is ranked. So that is the machine. That is what the diamonds built. A system that takes living worlds and converts them into personnel, and then sorts that personnel into rigid categories and punishes anyone who does not fit. The kindergartens are not an aberration. They are not a wartime measure. They are the normal, everyday function of the Diamond Authority. They are how Homeworld works, and they work by killing everything they touch. The Earth was supposed to be next. That is the premise of the entire show. If you strip away the characters, and the emotions, and the music, and the humour, the Earth was a colony. It had a prime kindergarten already operating. It had a beta kindergarten under construction. It had a plan, overseen by Pink Diamond, to be hollowed out like every other planet before it. The gems that would emerge from its soil would join the caste, take their places, resources, serve their diamonds, and the earth itself, the oceans, the forests, the animals, the billions of years of evolution that had produced complex organic life, all of that would be gone, not destroyed in a cataclysm, just used up, quietly, efficiently, the way the machine uses everything. And now we arrive at something that is genuinely difficult to talk about. Not because it is complicated, though it is. Not because it is sad, though it is that too. But because the show itself seems to understand that what it is about to show us crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. Everything we have discussed so far, the caste system, the colonization, the slow consumption of living worlds, all of it is monstrous. But it operates at a scale so large that it can almost feel abstract. You can hold the idea of a dying planet in your mind and still keep your distance from it. You can understand that billions of lives were lost and still process it as a number. What comes next does not allow that distance. What comes next is personal. In the second season, in an episode called Keeping It Together, which first aired on June 17th, 2015, Garnet and Steven descend into the kindergarten. They are investigating something. There have been signs, traces. Something is wrong down there beyond what is already wrong, beyond the hollowed out earth and the silent injectors. Something new. And what they find is one of the most disturbing things the show ever presents. They find the forced fusions. To understand what that means, you need to understand what a gem shard is. When a gem is shattered, they do not simply die. Their gemstone breaks into pieces, and each piece retains something. A fragment of consciousness maybe, a flicker of awareness. It is not life in any meaningful sense. It is not thought, but it is not nothing either. The shards still reach, still grasp, still try to form. They are the remnants of someone who once existed, and they do not know how to stop existing, even in pieces. Think of it as the nervous system of a body continuing to fire after the brain has gone, reflexive, automatic, and deeply, deeply sad. What Homeworld did with these shards is take them, the broken remains of crystal gems who fell during the war, and force them together, fuse them, not in the way that living gems fuse, not through connection or trust or love. These shards were pressed into one another, combined through technology, merged against whatever fading will they might still possess. And what emerges from that process is something that barely qualifies as a creature. It is a shape, a collection of limbs and fragments that do not belong together, crawling and reaching and twitching in ways that suggest pain without the capacity to articulate it. The forced fusions are not alive in any way that matters, but they are not dead either. They exist in a space between those two states, and that space is a kind of hell. When Garnet sees them, something breaks in her, and this is the part that matters. This is why the forced fusions are not just another item on a list of crimes. This is why they hit differently than everything else. Because Garnet is a fusion. Garnet is ruby and sapphire, held together by love so complete that their default state is togetherness. Fusion is not something Garnet does. It is something Garnet is. It is the most sacred, the most intimate, the most fundamentally beautiful thing she knows. It is the thing that defines her existence. It is the reason she exists at all. And the diamonds took that concept, that sacred act of connection, and they turned it into a weapon. They turned it into a punishment. They took the dead and they forced them into a grotesque parody of the thing Garnet holds most dear. Watch Garnet in that episode. Watch how she nearly falls apart. And I mean that literally. She nearly unfuses. Ruby and Sapphire begin to separate because the horror of what they are seeing is so profound that even their bond, their thousands of years old bond, struggles to hold under the weight of it. Garnet, who is stability itself, who is strength and calm and certainty, comes closer to breaking in that moment than almost any other point in the series. Because this is not just killing. Killing is terrible, but it has a finality to it. There is an end. The shattered gems were already gone in every way that mattered. Whatever awareness those shards retain, it is not personhood, it is not memory, it is not self. But the forced fusions take even that fading echo and twist it into something worse than death. They take the remains of the dead and they deny them rest. They take what is left of someone and they force it into a shape that was never meant to exist, a shape that cannot think or speak or understand understand what has happened to it, but that still moves, still reaches, still seems to suffer. There is a word for this in human history, and that word is desecration. It is the violation of the dead, and every culture on Earth, every single one, has understood instinctively that there is something uniquely wrong about it. You can debate the ethics of war, you can argue about the morality of killing in certain circumstances, but the desecration of the dead occupies a category of its own. It is the act of saying that your cruelty extends beyond life itself, that death is not enough, that even after someone is gone, you will find ways to make it worse. The diamonds did not need the forced fusions. That is the thing. This was not a strategic necessity. This was not a weapon that would turn the tide of the war. This was an experiment. This was homeworld scientists operating under diamond authority, taking the broken remains of enemy soldiers and seeing what would happen if they jammed them together. It was research. It was curiosity married to absolute indifference to suffering. And the fact that it was so casual, so clinical, so utterly devoid of any recognition that these were once people, that is what makes it so disturbing. The show does something very smart here. It does not linger on the forced fusions themselves for long. It does not need to. Once you have seen them, once you have understood what they are, the image does the work. What the show focuses on instead is Garnet. It focuses on the emotional reality of what this discovery means. Because the forced fusions are not just a crime against the shattered gems, they are a crime against the very concept of fusion. They are a statement, whether intentional or not, that fusion is just mechanics, just bodies pressing together, that there is nothing sacred about it, nothing meaningful, nothing worth respecting. The forced fusions reduce the most intimate act in gem culture to raw material, and for Garnet, who is living proof that fusion is love, that reduction is an assault on her identity, she does hold herself together, barely. She fights the forced fusions, and she does not look away and she does not fall apart, but you can see the cost of it. You can feel the strain, and in the aftermath she holds herself, ruby and sapphire, together as Garnet, and she makes a promise. She promises that she will not let this stand, that she will find them all, that she will stop it. But here is the thing that makes the forced fusions truly unforgivable. They were not the end of the experiment, they were the beginning. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Because the forced fusions that Garnet finds in the kindergarten, the twitching, crawling things made of 2 or 3 or 4 shards, they are prototypes. They are test runs. They are proof of concept for something so much larger, so much worse, that the mind struggles to hold it, and that something is called the cluster. The cluster is Yellow Diamond's project, her masterwork, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Take the concept of the forced fusions, the shattered shards of crystal gems pressed together against their will, and scale it up. Scale it up beyond anything you thought possible. The cluster is not made of 3 shards. It is not made of 10. It is not made of 100. The cluster is made of millions. Millions of shattered gem fragments, collected from the battlefields of the rebellion, gathered and compressed and fused into a single impossibly vast entity that was buried at the center of the earth. Let that settle for a moment. Millions. Each one of those fragments was once a person. Each one of those shards was once a gem who had a name, who had a role, who had thoughts and feelings and some version of a life. And each one of them was shattered in the war and then collected, not to be mourned, not to be remembered, but to be used. Raw material for a weapon so massive that its activation would destroy the entire planet. That is what the cluster is. It is a geo-weapon. It is designed to incubate in the Earth's core, growing, forming, pulling itself together from those millions of screaming fragments, until the day it emerges, and on that day, it will tear the planet apart from the inside. The Earth will crack open, everything on it will die, and Yellow Diamond will have her weapon, a forced fusion the size of a planet, born from the remains of everyone who dared to disagree with her. Peridot is the one who explains this. In an episode called When It Rains, which airs in October of 2015, she lays out the facts with the clinical detachment of someone who was raised to see nothing wrong with any of it. The cluster is an experiment. The Earth is its incubation chamber. When it forms, the planet will be destroyed. She states these things as though she is reading from a manual, because to her, at that point in her arc, that is all they are. Data, procedure, expected outcomes. She does not yet understand that the planet she is standing on is someone's home. She does not yet understand that the shards she is describing were people. That understanding will come later, and it will change her. But in that moment, she is simply reporting the facts. And the facts are these. Yellow Diamond, one of the 4 rulers of a galactic empire, ordered the construction of a weapon made from the corpses of her enemies, buried it inside a planet full of living things, and set it on a timer. She did this not out of rage, not out of grief, though both of those things may have played a role. She did it because she could, because the Earth was already a failed colony, already a nuisance, already a reminder of Pink Diamond's rebellion and Pink Diamond's apparent death. The cluster would solve multiple problems at once. It would give Homeworld a devastating new weapon. It would destroy the planet that had caused so much trouble, and it would use the remains of the rebels to do it, which carried its own kind of poetic cruelty. In the 3rd season, in an episode called Gem Drill, which airs on May 12, 2016, Steven and Peridot drill down to the Earth's core to confront the cluster before it can form. They take a small vehicle straight down through miles of rock and heat and pressure, and what they find at the centre of the Earth is not a weapon in any conventional sense. It is not a machine, it is not a bomb, it is a mass of light and shards vast beyond comprehension, and it is trying to take shape. The cluster is waking up, but something happens that nobody expected. Steven, who has his mother's powers, who can connect with gems in ways no one else can, reaches out to the cluster, not with a weapon, not with a drill, with his mind. And what he finds inside the cluster is not rage, it is not malice. It is not the cold mechanical process of a weapon powering up. What he finds is voices, millions of them, all crying out at once, all reaching for something, all trying to find the other pieces of themselves. The shards inside the cluster are looking for each other. That is what they are doing. That is all they have ever been doing. They are not trying to form a weapon. They are trying to find the gems they used to be. They are reaching blindly, desperately, through the mass of other fragments, searching for the pieces that match, the pieces that belong, and they cannot find them because they have been mixed together with millions of others, and the fragments do not fit, and they will never fit, and the searching will never end. This is what Yellow Diamond built. Not a weapon. A mass grave that screams. Steven does not destroy the cluster. He cannot. It is too vast, too complex, too alive in its own terrible way. What he does instead is help it. He helps the shards find each other, not their original forms. That is impossible, but each other in the moment. He helps them turn inward instead of outward, to hold each other instead of trying to emerge. The cluster bubbles itself. It chooses, insofar as it can choose anything, to stay contained, to stop reaching for a form it was never meant to have, and the Earth is saved, for now. But think about what was required to save it. Think about what Steven had to do. He had to descend to the centre of the planet, alone except for Peridot, and he had to make emotional contact with millions of tortured fragments of dead gems. He had to feel what they feel. He had to hear their voices, all of them, all at once, all in pain, all confused, all desperate. He is a child. He is 14 years old. And he had to carry the grief of millions because a diamond decided the Earth was a good place to bury her weapon. The cluster sits at the intersection of everything we have talked about. It is the caste system taken to its logical extreme, because the shards were crystal gems, rebels, gems who stepped out of their assigned roles and were punished for it even in death. It is colonization at its most literal, because the weapon is the planet, the Earth itself repurposed as an incubation chamber, and it is the forced fusion scaled up to an almost incomprehensible degree. Millions of voices instead of a handful, a planet killer instead of a lab experiment, and it was approved by a diamond, authorized at the highest level. This was not a rogue scientist. This was not a mistake. This was policy. Yellow diamond knew what the cluster was. She knew what it was made of. She knew what it would do, and she gave the order. Because to her, the shattered remains of her enemies were not people. They were not even remains. They were components. That is perhaps the most chilling thing about the diamonds, and about any system of power that operates on this scale. It is not that they are cruel for the sake of cruelty, though moments of cruelty certainly exist. It is that they have built a framework in which cruelty does not register as cruelty, in which the suffering of those beneath them is not even visible. Yellow Diamond did not sit in her throne and cackle about the screaming shards buried in the earth. She probably did not think about them at all. They were a line item, a resource allocation, a project among thousands of projects, managed and monitored and ultimately forgotten about until someone reminded her. That is the banality of it. That is what makes it so frightening. Not the scale of the evil, though the scale is staggering, but the casualness, the way it disappears into bureaucracy, the way millions of tortured voices become a status report on a diamond's desk. And we are still not done, because the diamonds had one more weapon, one more act of destruction so vast, so indiscriminate, so thoroughly devastating that it makes everything else look like a prelude. And unlike the cluster, which was buried and hidden and ticking away in secret, this one was carried out in plain sight, in full view, as a deliberate, conscious choice. After Pink Diamond is apparently shattered, after the rebellion seems to have committed the ultimate act of defiance by destroying one of the 4 rulers of the Gem Empire, the remaining 3 diamonds respond, and their response is not measured. It is not strategic. It is not targeted. Their response is to destroy everything on the planet. Everything. Every single gem still on the surface of the earth, whether they are crystal gems or homeworld loyalists, whether they are rebels or soldiers who are simply following orders. It does not matter. The diamonds decide that the earth and everyone on it must be wiped clean. White diamond, yellow diamond, and blue diamond combine their powers. In an episode called Monster Reunion, which airs on July 27th, 2016, we learn what happened through Centipedal, or rather through Nephrite, because that is her real name. She is a homeworld pilot, a gem who was stationed on Earth during the war, who was loyal to the diamonds, who was simply doing her job. She was not a rebel, she was not a crystal gem, she was on their side. And when Stephen partially heals her, when he manages to restore just enough of her mind for her to communicate, she draws what she remembers. She draws the 3 diamonds high above the earth, unleashing a blast of light that covers the entire planet. And then she draws what happened next. She draws herself and her crew and every gem on the surface caught in that light. And then she draws the monsters they became, because the corruption attack did not kill them. That is the particular horror of it. Death would have been cleaner. Death would have been, in some terrible way, kinder. What the diamonds did instead was worse. The blast stripped the affected gems of everything that made them who they were. Their memories, their personalities, their ability to think, to reason, to recognize themselves or anyone else. It left them alive in a sense. It left their gemstones intact, but it transformed their physical forms into something monstrous, something animal, something driven by instinct and pain and confusion. The corrupted gems are not dead, they are lost. They are wandering the earth in shapes that do not belong to them, lashing out at anything they encounter because they do not understand what they are or what happened to them. They are gems with their minds erased and their bodies twisted into nightmares. This is what happened to Nephrite. This is what happened to every gem on the planet's surface. Homeworld soldiers and crystal gems alike, caught in the same indiscriminate blast, reduced to the same mindless, suffering state. The diamonds did not distinguish between friend and enemy. They did not evacuate their own forces first. Some made it out. Some received the order to retreat in time, but many did not. Many homeworld loyal gems were still on Earth when the light hit, and they were corrupted just the same as everyone else. Their loyalty meant nothing. Their service meant nothing. They were acceptable losses. Nephrite's drawings in Monster Reunion are some of the most haunting images in the entire series. They are simple, almost childlike, because her mind is barely functioning. She draws with crayons, rough shapes and bright colours, and yet the meaning is perfectly clear. 3 figures at the top of the page, 3 diamonds, lines of light streaming down, and at the bottom, the gems, before and after, before they are standing, after they are not recognizable. This was scorched earth. This was the diamond saying, if we cannot have this planet, no one can. If we cannot control what happens here, then nothing will happen here. Every gem on earth will be reduced to nothing, not shattered, not killed, but erased, turned into monsters that will roam the surface forever, a living testament to the cost of defiance. And think about who ordered this. White Diamond, the most powerful gem in existence, the one who believes herself to be perfect, who believes she is always right, who cannot conceive of a reality in which she does not have absolute control. Yellow Diamond, who has already demonstrated her willingness to destroy planets, who sees the Earth as nothing more than a failed project. And Blue Diamond, who is grieving, who is furious, who wants someone to pay for what happened to Pink. 3 rulers, 3 perspectives, and all 3 of them arrive at the same conclusion. Destroy it all. Destroy every gem on the planet. Let the Earth become a graveyard populated by monsters. The corruption attack reveals something fundamental about the diamonds that all their other crimes only hint at. They do not care about gems. Not really. They care about the hierarchy. They care about control. They care about the empire as a concept, as a structure, as a system that they sit atop. But the individual gems within that system are expendable. All of them. Homeworld soldiers, colonists, loyal subjects who served for thousands of years. They are all expendable if the alternative is admitting weakness. The diamonds would rather destroy their own people than lose face. They would rather corrupt a planet full of gems than accept that the rebellion won. And there is Lapis Lazuli, Lapis, who deserves her own discussion, because what happened to her is a different kind of crime, quieter and in some ways more personal than the grand-scale horrors we have been talking about. Lapis is a homeworld gem. She is not a soldier, not a rebel, not a crystal gem. She is simply a gem who was on Earth at the wrong time. She was caught in the war, and at some point she was placed inside a mirror. We meet her in the first season in a 2-part episode called Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem, which airs on September 25th, 2014. Pearl gives Steven a mirror, a handheld looking glass that is supposed to serve as an educational tool. It shows images from gem history. It is used as a reference device, and inside that mirror, powering it, trapped within its surface, is Lapis Lazuli. She has been in there for thousands of years. Think about that for a moment. Thousands of years. Conscious, aware, unable to move, unable to speak except by replaying fragments of things she has heard, unable to do anything except exist inside a mirror that other gems use as a tool. She was not shattered. She was not corrupted. She was imprisoned in the most personal way imaginable, reduced from a living being to a piece of technology, turned into a thing, and nobody came for her. Nobody asked where she was. Nobody noticed that the mirror they were carrying around contained a person, because in the gem caste system, certain gems are not people, they are objects, and Lapis was treated as one. When Steven finally frees her, when he pulls her gem from the back of the mirror, and she reforms, she is terrified, she is angry, she is traumatized in ways that the show will spend seasons exploring. And the thing that makes her story so pointed is that she was not a target. She was not punished for a crime. She was not a rebel who earned the diamond's wrath. She was collateral damage. She was a gem who happened to be in the wrong place, and the system ground her up and used her and forgot about her. That is what the Diamond Authority does to gems who do not matter enough to protect. It does not even bother to be cruel to them on purpose. It simply does not see them at all. Lapis spent millennia inside that mirror while the war raged above her, while the corruption attack transformed the planet, while thousands of years of silence followed. She was awake for all of it. She felt all of it. And when she finally gets free, her first instinct is not to fight or to seek justice. Her first instinct is to run, to get as far away from this planet and everyone on it as she possibly can, because Earth is not a home to her, it is a prison. And every gem on it, crystal gem or otherwise, is a reminder of everything she lost. The corruption attack, the mirror, Nephrite's drawings, the monsters wandering the countryside. All of these are different facets of the same truth. The diamonds do not see destruction as a last resort. They see it as maintenance. A planet is not working out, so you scrap it. A gem is in the way. so you repurpose her. An entire army is no longer useful, so you erase their minds. It is all the same gesture repeated at different scales. The gesture of absolute power exercised without a single moment of hesitation. And the worst part, the part that the show will eventually force us to confront, is that the diamonds did not do any of this because they are monsters. They did it because they are rulers. They did it because this is what unchecked authority looks like when it has existed for long enough. They did it because no one ever told them no. No one ever could. And in the absence of any check on their power, in the absence of any voice that could say, "This is wrong," and be heard, they simply did what power does when it has no limits. It consumed everything it touched. There is a particular kind of cruelty in creating something perfect and then giving it nothing worth fighting for. Jasper is, by every measure Homeworld has ever used, a flawless gem. She emerged from the beta kindergarten on Earth, a facility that was rushed, underfunded, thrown together in the middle of a war that was already going badly. The holes in the beta kindergarten walls tell the story. They are uneven, too close together, punched into the rock at wrong angles. Peridot, when she finally sees the site, is horrified. She calls it the worst kindergarten she has ever seen. Every gem that came out of that place was supposed to be defective. That was the expectation. That was, in a sense, the design. And then there is Jasper, one perfect exit hole in a wall full of failures. One flawless soldier produced by a system that had already written off the entire facility. She is enormous. She is powerful. She is everything the Diamond Authority could want in a warrior. Kimberly Brooks voices her with this deep, controlled intensity that makes every word sound like a threat wrapped in discipline. Jasper does not shout because she needs to. She shouts because she has earned the right to, and she knows it. When she first appears in The Return, the 48th episode of the first season, airing on March 12, 2015, she arrives on Earth like a force of nature. She has a mission. She has a purpose. She defeats Garnet, who up until that point has been the most powerful fighter the crystal gems have, with a single strike from a gem destabilizer. It is not even close. The show spends an entire season building Garnet up as this unstoppable protector, and Jasper dismantles that image in seconds. She is that good. She is that dangerous. She is exactly what the diamonds made her to be, and that is the tragedy, because Jasper is loyal. Not loyal in the way that someone chooses to be loyal after weighing their options and deciding that the cause is worth following. Loyal in the way that a tool is loyal to the hand that wields it. She was made to serve. She was made to fight for her diamond. She was made to win wars and crush rebellions and enforce order across the cosmos. And she did all of that. She did it perfectly. She fought in the war for Earth. She watched her diamond, pink diamond, the one she was made to serve, get shattered, or so she believed. She carried that loss for thousands of years. She carried it the way a soldier carries a wound that never heals, not because the body cannot repair itself, but because the mind will not let it. And the system she served so faithfully, it did not care. The Diamond Authority did not mourn Jasper. It did not reward her loyalty. It did not even remember her. Not really. She was a resource, a weapon that had been deployed and had served its function. When she comes back to Earth in Season 3, she is not on a mission from the Diamonds. She is looking for something to fill the void that their indifference left behind. She is looking for purpose. What she finds instead is corruption. In Alone at Sea, the 15th episode of Season 3, airing in July 2016, Jasper tracks down Lapis Lazuli and begs her to fuse again. The language she uses is disturbing. She says she has changed. She says she needs Lapis. She says that malachite, their fusion, that terrible tortured fusion that spent months at the bottom of the ocean, was the only time she ever felt powerful enough. This is a soldier who could defeat Garnet in single combat, and she is saying that her own strength is not enough. That is what the system did to her. It made her powerful, and then made her feel like power was the only thing that mattered, and then it made sure that no amount of power would ever be sufficient. In Earthlings, the 22nd episode of Season 3, airing on August 8th, 2016, Jasper makes her final desperate play. She fuses with a corrupted gem. She chooses corruption over defeat. She chooses to destroy herself rather than accept that the war is over, that her diamond is gone, that everything she fought for was a lie, and the corruption takes her. It spreads across her body like a disease, warping her form, stealing her mind. The perfect soldier, the one flawless gem to come out of a broken kindergarten, reduced to a monster. The diamonds did not corrupt Jasper directly. That was a consequence of the attack they launched against Earth at the end of the war, the blast that corrupted every gem on the planet. But they created the conditions that led to her destruction. They built a system that valued gems only for their utility. They gave Jasper nothing to live for except service. And when that service ended, when the war was over and the diamond she served was gone, Jasper had nothing left. No identity outside of combat. No relationships outside of hierarchy. No sense of self that was not defined by what she could do for someone more powerful than her. She is not a villain. She is a casualty. And then there is Bismuth. If Jasper represents what happens to a loyal soldier in a system that does not care about loyalty, Bismuth represents what happens to a rebel who discovers that rebellion has its own hierarchies, its own silences, its own betrayals. Bismuth is a blacksmith. She was made to build structures, tools, weapons. On Homeworld, she would have spent her existence constructing arenas and spires for the diamonds, never questioning, never deviating from her purpose. But she joined the rebellion. She chose rose quartz. She chose freedom. She chose to believe that gems could be more than what they were made to be. Uzo Aduba voices Bismuth with this warmth that is impossible to resist. She is loud, she is joyful, she is the kind of person who picks you up in a bear hug before you have finished saying hello. When she is unbubbled for the first time in Bismuth, the two-part episode spanning episodes 20 and 21 of Season 3, airing on August 4th, 2016. Her reunion with the crystal gems is genuinely moving. She has been frozen in time for thousands of years. She does not know the war is over. She does not know that most of her friends are gone. And when she finds out, she grieves, but she also gets back to work, because that is who she is. She builds, she creates, she solves problems with her hands. The problem she tried to solve was the war itself. She created the breaking point, a weapon designed to do the one thing that gems are not supposed to do to each other: shatter, destroy permanently. End a gem not by poofing them, not by bubbling them, not by any of the reversible methods that gem society uses, but by breaking them into pieces so small that they can never reform. It is, in the context of the show, the equivalent of a weapon of mass destruction. It crosses a line that even a war is not supposed to cross. Rose Quartz disagreed. She told Bismuth that the crystal gems would not use the breaking point, that shattering was wrong no matter who the target was, that they would find another way. And then Rose poofed Bismuth and bubbled her, put her away, stored her in lion's mane like a secret too dangerous to let out, and she told no one, not Garnet, not Pearl, not any of the other crystal gems who had fought beside Bismuth and called her friend. Rose simply made Bismuth disappear and let everyone assume she had been lost in the war. Think about that for a moment. Rose Quartz, the leader of the rebellion, the gem who stood up to the diamonds and said that every gem deserved freedom and autonomy and the right to choose their own path, silenced a dissenter by imprisoning her in a pocket dimension for 5,000 years. She did not argue, she did not debate, she did not try to find a compromise. She made a unilateral decision about another gem's existence and then lied about it to everyone who cared about that gem. That is not liberation. That is control, wearing a different face. The irony is suffocating. Bismuth wanted to shatter the diamonds, the very beings who had enslaved her, who had built a civilization on the backs of gems like her, who would have had her shattered without hesitation if she had been caught. And Rose, who was secretly Pink Diamond the entire time, could not allow that. Not because shattering was wrong in the abstract, but because shattering the diamonds meant shattering herself. Pink Diamond could not let anyone build a weapon that might be turned on her own kind. Her refusal was not principled, it was self-preserving. Bismuth spent 5,000 years in a bubble because Pink Diamond was protected protecting her own interests and calling it morality. Both Jasper and Bismuth are products of the diamond system. One served it faithfully, one fought against it with everything she had, and both were used and discarded, Jasper by the diamonds directly, Bismuth by a diamond pretending to be something else. The system does not care which side you are on. It does not care about your loyalty or your rebellion or your principles or your pain. It consumes everyone. It uses what it needs and throws away what it does not. And it does this so efficiently, so completely, that the people being consumed do not even realize it until it is too late. Jasper died believing in a diamond who never existed the way she thought. Bismuth was imprisoned by a diamond who claimed to be fighting for her freedom. The cruelty is not just in the outcome. The cruelty is in the symmetry. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Deep beneath the surface of Homeworld, in tunnels and caverns that the Diamond Authority has either forgotten or deliberately ignores, there are gems hiding. They have been hiding for a very long time. Not years, not decades, centuries, possibly longer. They live in the dark because the alternative is being destroyed. They are called the off-colors, and they are, by Homeworld standards, defective, wrong, broken in ways that cannot be fixed because they were never broken in the first place. They simply exist in a way that the system cannot accommodate, and rather than expand its definition of acceptable, the system decided they should die. Rhodonite is a fusion, not the kind of fusion that Homeworld permits, the temporary, tactical merging of two identical gems for combat purposes, but a permanent fusion of a ruby and a pearl, two different gem types, fused together because they love each other. On Earth, among the crystal gems, this would be celebrated. On Homeworld, it is a crime punishable by shattering. Rhodonite lives in a state of constant anxiety because she has spent her entire existence knowing that being seen means being killed. She is afraid of everything, and the show does not play this for comedy. It plays it for exactly what it is, the psychological damage of living under a regime that has declared your existence illegal. Fluorite is a fusion of 6 gems. 6. She moves slowly, speaks slowly, thinks at a pace that frustrates anyone expecting efficiency. When she talks, her words come out one at a time, each one considered, each one deliberate, as though she is consulting with all 6 of her component gems before committing to a syllable. She is gentle and wise, and patient in a way that suggests she has had a very, very long time to practice patience. In a society that values function and speed and purpose, fluorite is an aberration. She is too many gems being too many things at once. She is excess. She is, in Homeworld's eyes, waste. Padparadscha is a sapphire. Sapphires are supposed to see the future. That is their function, their purpose. The reason the diamonds value them. Padparadscha can only see the past. She makes predictions about things that have already happened, announcing them with the same gravity and confidence that a functioning sapphire would use to predict what is about to occur. She will tell you that someone has just entered the room 30 seconds after they walked in. She will warn you about a danger that has already passed. Her power is, by Homeworld standards, useless. And because Homeworld measures worth exclusively by utility, Padparadscha is worthless. The Rutile twins are a single gem that split wrong during formation. 2 heads, 2 personalities, 1 body. They finish each other's sentences. They share a perspective that is literally doubled, seeing the world from 2 angles at once. On Earth, they might be considered remarkable. On Homeworld, they are a manufacturing error, a defect, something that should have been caught and disposed of during quality control. All of them are hiding from shattering robonoids, automated drones that patrol the underground, searching for defective gems to destroy. The diamonds did not even send living soldiers to hunt these gems down. They sent machines, robots. The off-colors are not important enough to warrant a personal touch. They are pest control, vermin to be exterminated by automated systems, while the diamonds attend to matters that actually matter. This is where Lars finds them. Lars, the anxious, insecure human teenager from Beach City, who has spent the entire series being afraid of everything and pretending not to care about anything. He ends up on Homeworld by accident, pulled there through a series of events he never asked for and certainly never prepared for. And in Off Colors, the third episode of Season 5, airing on May 29th, 2017, he stumbles into their hiding place and discovers an entire community of gems that the Diamond Authority threw away. What happens next is one of the most quietly devastating sequences in the entire series. Lars dies, not metaphorically, not in a dream sequence, not in a way that can be easily undone with a magic spell or a convenient plot device. A shattering Robonoid attacks, and Lars throws himself in front of it to protect the Off Colors. Lars, who has never been brave, who has spent the entire show running from everything, who could not even tell the girl he liked how he felt, and it kills him. His body goes limp, the light leaves his eyes. He is, for a moment that stretches into eternity, dead. Stephen cries over his body, and Stephen's tears, which carry his mother's healing powers, bring Lars back, but not the same. Lars turns pink. His skin, his hair, his entire being takes on a pink hue that marks him as something new, something changed, something that is no longer entirely human. His hair becomes a portal, a gateway that connects to the dimension inside Lion's mane. He is alive, but he is different now, and the show never fully explores what that difference costs him. He will outlive everyone he knows. He will watch his parents age and die while he stays the same. He was a teenager who was afraid of being embarrassed, and now he is something approaching immortal, and he did not get a choice in any of it. But in that moment, what matters is that he is alive, and so are the Off Colors. And Lars, this scared kid from Beach City, becomes their protector. He stays on Homeworld so they can escape. He fights for gems that his own world would not have understood. Gems that Homeworld considered garbage. Gems that have spent their entire existence being told that they should not exist. The Off Colors are not tragic because of what was done to them specifically. They are tragic because of how little thought went into their persecution. The Diamonds did not sit in their thrones and deliberate over the fate of Rhodonite or Fluorite or Padparadscha. They did not weigh the moral implications of destroying these gems. They simply established a standard. This is what a gem should be, and automated the destruction of everything that did not meet it. The cruelty is bureaucratic. It is systemic. It is the kind of evil that does not require malice, only indifference. And these gems, these rejected, discarded, supposedly worthless gems, are some of the most fully realized characters in the entire show. Rhodonite's anxiety is not a character flaw. It is a rational response to a world that wants her dead. Fluorite's slowness is not a deficiency. It is the natural result of 6 minds working in harmony, taking the time to reach consensus because every voice matters. Padparadscha's backwards predictions are not useless. They are a different way of processing the world, a perspective that values reflection over anticipation. The Rutile twins are not broken. They are a collaboration, a partnership that begins at the molecular level. The crime is not just what the Diamonds did to these gems. The crime is that they did not even consider them worth thinking about. They were sorted, categorized, and marked for destruction by a system so vast and so impersonal that no individual diamond ever had to look at them and make a conscious decision. The system did it for them. The system always does it for them. That is the point of having a system. And this is where the show makes its most damning argument against the Diamond Authority. It is not the wars. It is not the colonization. It is not even the corruption attack that destroyed an entire planet's worth of gems. It is this, the quiet, mechanical, utterly thoughtless disposal of anyone who does not fit. The Off Colors are living proof that Homeworld standards are arbitrary, that the definitions of correct and defective are not based on any objective reality, but on the preferences of 4 beings who decided, thousands of years ago, what perfection looked like. And everything that did not match that image was thrown away, not punished, not reformed, thrown away, like they were nothing, because to the Diamonds, they were nothing. And that is perhaps the worst crime of all, not the destruction, but the dismissal, the absolute certainty that some lives are not worth preserving, the quiet efficiency of a system that destroys without malice, without anger, without even the dignity of being hated, just removed, quietly, automatically, as though they were never there at all. Now here is something that often gets overlooked. when people talk about the Diamond Authority, they did not just control gems through fear or ideology or brute force, though they certainly used all of those. They controlled them through design, through engineering, through the deliberate, systematic limitation of what gems could be and what they could do, and nowhere is this more visible than in the divide between Era 1 and Era 2. The eras are Homeworld's way of marking time, but they are also a way of marking capability. Era 1 gems, the gems made before the rebellion on Earth, before the war, before everything went wrong, are powerful. They have innate abilities. They are made with abundant resources, given everything they need to fulfill their purpose, and in many cases, exceed it. Garnet, amethyst, pearl, jasper, lapis lazuli. These are all Era 1 gems, and their powers are formidable. They were made in a time of expansion, when the Diamond Authority had access to planet after planet's worth of raw material, and they poured those resources into their creations without restraint. Then they lost Earth. The rebellion succeeded, at least in part. Pink Diamond was gone, the planet was abandoned, and with it went the resources that Earth's kindergartens would have provided. The loss was significant, not catastrophic, not empire-ending, but significant enough to change how the diamonds made gems going forward. Era 2 gems are weaker. This is not an accident. This is not an unfortunate side effect of resource scarcity. This is a choice. The diamonds could have made fewer gems with the same amount of resources, maintaining quality. Instead, they chose to make more gems with less, producing a generation of servants who are fundamentally diminished compared to their predecessors. They chose quantity over quality because the empire needed bodies, not individuals. It needed workers and soldiers and administrators, functional units that could perform their assigned tasks and nothing more. Peridot is the clearest example. When she first arrives on Earth, she is wearing limb enhancers, technological extensions that give her floating fingers, a screen display, tractor beams, and the ability to fly using helicopter-like rotors. These are not accessories, they are prosthetics. Without them, Peridot is small, physically small in a way that is shocking when you first see her without the enhancers. She looks like a child standing next to the other gems, and she has no innate powers, no weapon she can summon from her gem, no elemental abilities, no enhanced strength beyond what her small form can provide. She was made in Era 2, and Era 2 gems are made to be dependent on technology that Homeworld provides. Think about what that means. The limb enhancers are not a gift, they are a leash. Homeworld gives Era 2 gems the technology they need to function, and in doing so ensures that those gems can never function without Homeworld. If you take away a Peridot's enhancers, she is small, she is weak, she is by her own initial assessment useless. The technology does not empower her, it creates a dependency that keeps her tethered to the system that made her. She cannot rebel because she cannot survive without the tools her masters provide. She cannot imagine a life outside the hierarchy because the hierarchy is literally built into her body. It is only on Earth, separated from Homeworld and stripped of her enhancers, that Peridot discovers she is more than what she was designed to be. In Too Short to Ride, she discovers ferrokinesis, the ability to manipulate metal with her mind. It is a power she always had, buried somewhere inside her gem, but that Homeworld never told her about. Perhaps they did not know. Perhaps they did not care. Or perhaps, and this is the reading the show seems to encourage, they knew exactly what Era 2 gems were capable of and deliberately suppressed that information, because a gem who knows her own strength is a gem who might start asking questions. The limb enhancers are not the only tools of control. Gem destabilizers are weapons specifically designed to exploit gem biology. They disrupt a gem's physical form, forcing her to retreat into her gem. Jasper uses one against Garnet in Jailbreak, the 49th episode of the first season, and the effect is immediate and total. One touch, and Garnet simply comes apart. The destabilizer does not damage the gem itself. It does not shatter or crack. It simply forces a retreat, a temporary death that leaves the gem helpless and contained. It is the perfect authoritarian weapon. It neutralizes without destroying, leaving the target intact for whatever comes next. Interrogation, imprisonment, harvesting. Then there is the Gem Rejuvenator. Introduced in Steven Universe, the movie. Spinel wields it, a scythe-like weapon that does something arguably worse than shattering. It resets a gem to factory settings. It erases everything: memories, personality, growth, relationships, love, grief, joy, every experience that made that gem who she is, and returns her to the blank state she was in when she first emerged. The gem survives, technically. The body is intact. The stone is uncracked, but the person is gone. Everything that made her herself has been wiped clean, replaced by the default programming that Homeworld installed at the moment of creation. This is not a weapon of war. This is a weapon of control in its purest form. The Rejuvenator does not say, "You will be destroyed." It says, "You will be what we originally made you to be." It says, "Everything you have become since we made you, every choice, every rebellion, every moment of growth is irrelevant. We can undo it all. We can put you back in the box. We can make you forget that you ever left." And then there are the shattering Robonoids, automated machines that patrol Homeworld's forgotten spaces, searching for off-color gems to destroy. They do not negotiate. They do not warn. They do not offer mercy or give second chances. They simply identify anything that does not meet Homeworld's standards and eliminate it. The Diamonds automated genocide. They built machines to do the killing for them, so they would not have to think about it. So they would not have to see the faces of the gems they were destroying, so the whole ugly process could happen quietly, efficiently, out of sight and out of mind. Every one of these technologies tells the same story. The Diamonds did not just build an empire, they built a system of control so comprehensive that it operates at every level: biological, technological, psychological. They made gems weaker, so they would need Homeworld. They built weapons that could unmake a gem's identity with a single touch. They automated the destruction of anyone who did not fit their standards. They did not just want obedience, they wanted dependency. They wanted a universe full of gems who could not imagine being anything other than what they were told to be, because the very structure of their existence was designed to prevent them from imagining anything else. Era 2 is not just a period in Homeworld's history, it is a philosophy. It is the belief that control is more efficient than freedom, that a diminished servant is better than an empowered individual, that the safest way to prevent rebellion is to make rebellion impossible, not through force, but through design. The Diamonds looked at the rebellion on Earth, at Rose Quartz and her crystal gems, and their messy, chaotic, beautiful insistence on being more than what they were made to be, and they said, never again. And then they redesigned their entire civilization to make sure it could never happen again. They did not ban freedom, they engineered it out of existence, and that perhaps more than any single act of violence or conquest is the true measure of what the Diamond Authority was willing to do to maintain its grip on the universe. They did not just control gems, they controlled what gems could be. They set the ceiling and called it the sky, and for thousands of years, no one looked up long enough to notice the difference. There is a place, somewhere far from Earth, where human beings live without suffering. They do not know hunger, they do not know loneliness, they do not know grief or regret or the quiet ache of wanting something they cannot have. They live in a kind of paradise, surrounded by beauty, surrounded by comfort, surrounded by others just like them, and they have lived this way for thousands of years. It sounds on the surface like mercy. It sounds like the one good thing a diamond ever did, but it is not mercy, it is a zoo. Blue Diamond maintains a human zoo aboard a space station, far from Earth, far from the sun, far from anything that might remind its inhabitants that they were ever part of a larger world. The station is guarded by amethyst and jasper soldiers, gems bred for obedience and strength, and the humans inside have no idea they are being guarded at all. They do not know what a guard is. They do not know what a door is, in the sense of something that could be opened to reveal a world beyond. They know only the enclosure, the soft grass, the warm light, the gentle voice that tells them when to eat, when to sleep, when to play, when to love. This is what makes the zoo so deeply unsettling. It is not a place of violence. There are no chains, there are no cells, there are no punishments, because there is nothing to punish. The humans inside have never disobeyed, because they have never been given the framework to understand understand what disobedience even means. They have never rebelled because they have never encountered a boundary firm enough to push against. They simply exist in a state of permanent hollow contentment, and they believe, because they have never been shown otherwise, that this is all there is. We see this place for the first time across a stretch of episodes in Season 4. In Steven's dream, Blue Diamond comes to Earth and she encounters Greg Universe. And something about Greg, his warmth, his openness, his willingness to sit with her in her grief, moves Blue Diamond. It moves her so much that she decides to keep him, not in the way you keep a friend or a companion, or even a pet, in the way you keep a specimen. She takes Greg from Earth. She takes him from his son. She takes him from his life. And she places him in the zoo, because in her mind she is saving him. She is protecting him from the Earth that Pink Diamond loved and lost. She is giving him paradise. Greg, of course, does not experience it as paradise. He experiences it as kidnapping, because that is what it is. But here is where the show does something remarkable. When we finally see the inside of the zoo in the zoo, the humans there are not miserable. They are not pounding on the walls. They are not weeping for freedom. They are happy. Genuinely, thoroughly, completely happy. They laugh. They play. They embrace each other with the easy warmth of people who have never known betrayal. And watching them, you feel something complicated stir inside you, because part of you thinks, is this really so bad? Is a life without suffering, even if it is a life without choice, really worse than what we have? Is freedom worth the pain that comes with it? The show lets you sit with that question. It does not rush to answer it. It lets you watch these humans living their curated lives, and it lets you feel the pull of it, the appeal, the seduction of a world where no one ever has to make a hard decision, because all the decisions have already been made for you. And then it shows you the choosing. The choosing is the zoo, is method of pairing humans for reproduction. A voice, the same general guiding voice that governs every aspect of life inside the enclosure, announces that it is time, and the humans gather, and they are told who they will be with. Not asked, told. The pairings are assigned. There is no courtship. There is no longing. There is no slow, terrifying process of opening yourself up to another person and hoping they choose to stay. There is just the voice and the assignment and the expectation of compliance. And the humans comply. They always comply, because they have never been given the concept of refusal. When Greg disrupts the choosing, when he says no, when he tells them that where he comes from, people choose for themselves, the humans do not understand. They are not angry. They are not defiant. They are confused. Deeply, fundamentally confused, in the way a person might be confused if you told them gravity was optional. The concept of choosing your own partner is so foreign to them that it does not even register as a possibility. It registers as nonsense, as error, as something that does not compute. And then when they realise that the choosing has been disrupted, when they understand that someone has not been paired, they do not celebrate. They weep. They weep because the system has failed, and the system is the only thing they know, and without it, they are lost. They weep because freedom, when you have never experienced it, does not feel like liberation. It feels like falling. This is the crime of the zoo. Not violence, not cruelty, not hatred. The crime is the erasure of the capacity for self-determination. The crime is building a world so perfectly controlled that the people inside it cannot even conceive of wanting something different. The crime is making a cage so beautiful that its inhabitants thank you for the bars. Blue Diamond does not see it this way, of course. Blue Diamond sees the zoo as an act of preservation, perhaps even an act of love, in her own vast alien way. She kept these humans alive when the rest of their species was meant to be collateral damage in a colonial project. She gave them safety. She gave them permanence. She gave them an existence free from the chaos and cruelty that defines so much of organic life. But love that removes all agency is not love. It is ownership. And a paradise you cannot leave is not a paradise. It is a prison with better lighting. The zoo also reveals something important about the diamonds that is easy to overlook. Their crimes are not always committed with malice. Sometimes they are committed with what the diamonds genuinely believe is compassion. Blue Diamond does does not keep humans in a zoo because she hates them. She keeps them because she finds them charming, endearing, worth collecting. And that framing, the framing of living beings as collectibles, as curiosities, as things to be preserved under glass, is itself a profound violation. It is the reduction of personhood to spectacle. It is the belief that you can love something and still deny it everything that makes life meaningful. When the crystal gems infiltrate the station in Gem Heist, they have to pretend to be loyal subjects of the Diamond Authority. They have to perform obedience, perform hierarchy, perform the very system they have spent thousands of years fighting against. And it works. It works because the system is so deeply ingrained, so thoroughly normalized, that even the guards cannot imagine someone would fake allegiance. The idea that someone might not want to serve is, for them, as incomprehensible as the idea of choosing your own partner is for the humans in the enclosure. The zoo is a mirror. It reflects the entire Diamond Authority in miniature, a system so complete, so totalizing, that the beings inside it cannot see the walls. A system that calls itself care, a system that calls itself order, a system that calls itself love. And the humans inside it smile and play and laugh and never once look up at the glass above them and wonder who is watching. That perhaps is the most unsettling thing of all. Not that the diamonds built a cage, but that they built one so perfect the people inside it never even thought to look for the door. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Now, we have talked about the diamonds as a collective. We have talked about their systems, their wars, their weapons. We have talked about colonization and corruption and the slow, methodical erasure of entire worlds. But there is one diamond we have not yet examined closely. One diamond who stands apart from the others, not because her crimes are greater, but because they are different, because they are personal. Pink Diamond. Pink Diamond is the one they mourned. She is the one Blue Diamond wept for across 5,000 years. She is the one Yellow Diamond wanted to erase by destroying the very planet Pink had loved. She is the absence at the center of everything. The missing piece that shaped the entire Diamond Authority is grief and rage and denial. And when the truth about her finally comes out, it does not bring closure. It brings a different kind of devastation entirely, because Pink Diamond is not innocent. She is not the martyred saint the crystal gems believed in. She is not the irredeemable tyrant the diamonds remember. She is something far more difficult to reckon with. She is a person who did terrible things for reasons that were sometimes selfish, sometimes and almost always complicated. Let us start with Spinel. Spinel is a gem who is made for one purpose: to be Pink Diamond's playmate. Her entire existence is designed around making Pink happy, around being Pink's companion, around standing in Pink's garden and playing with her forever. And Pink, for a time, accepts this. She plays with Spinel, she laughs with Spinel, she lets Spinel believe that they are friends, that their bond is real, that it matters. And then Pink Diamond gets a colony. She gets Earth. She gets a new purpose, a new world, a new identity to try on, and Spinel does not fit into that new identity. Spinel is a reminder of who Pink used to be, the silly, playful, childish Diamond who was not taken seriously. And so Pink Diamond tells Spinel to stay in the garden, to stand very still, to wait. And Spinel does. She waits for 6,000 years. She stands in that garden, in that exact spot, smiling, trusting, believing that Pink will come back for her. And Pink never does. 6,000 years, alone, standing still, waiting for someone who has already forgotten you exist. When Spinel finally learns the truth, in Steven Universe the movie, her pain is so vast, so all-consuming, that it nearly destroys the Earth, and you cannot blame her. You cannot look at what was done to her and call it anything other than abandonment, deliberate, conscious, cowardly abandonment. Pink Diamond did not tell Spinel the truth. She did not say, "I do not need you anymore." She did not give Spinel the chance to grieve, to adapt, to find a new purpose. She simply left. She left and she never looked back. Then there is Pink Pearl. Our Pearl, the one we know, the one who stands beside Steven, is not Pink Diamond's original Pearl. Pink Diamond had a Pearl before, a Pearl who was bright and joyful and full of personality, and Pink Diamond in a moment of rage, in one of her famous tantrums, damaged her. She cracked Pink Pearl's eye. She hurt her so badly that the damage was permanent, carried across thousands of years, visible even after Pink Pearl was taken away and reassigned to White Diamond. We learn this in Volleyball, an episode of Steven Universe Future, and the revelation is quiet and devastating. Pink Diamond hurt someone who loved her, someone who existed to serve her, someone who had no power to fight back and no ability to leave. And then there is our Pearl, the Pearl we know, the Pearl who chose to fight beside Rose Quartz, who chose to love her, who chose to follow her into a war that would define the rest of her existence. Pink Diamond, as Rose Quartz, gave Pearl a direct order. She ordered Pearl never to speak about her true identity. She ordered Pearl to keep the secret of Pink Diamond is shattering. And this was not a request, it was a command, encoded into Pearl's very being. For thousands of years, Pearl physically cannot tell anyone the truth. She tries. There are moments where she reaches for the words, where you can see the agony of wanting to speak and being unable to, where her hands fly to her mouth and silence her against her will. Pink Diamond took Pearl's voice, not metaphorically, literally, and Pearl loved her anyway. Pearl kept the secret anyway. Pearl carried the weight of it for millennia, and it warped her, and it defined her, and she bore it because she believed in Rose Quartz, because she believed the lie was necessary, because she had no choice. Then there is the war itself. Pink Diamond wanted to save the Earth. That much is true. She saw the organic life on this planet and she loved it. Genuinely loved it, and she did not want it destroyed. But the way she chose to save it was built on deception. She created the identity of Rose Quartz. She staged a rebellion. She convinced gems to fight and die for a cause they believed in, a cause they thought was led by a common gem who had risen up against tyranny. And then she faked her own death. She had Pearl shapeshift into Rose Quartz and shatter her, or appear to shatter her, in front of witnesses. She let the entire gem empire believe that Pink Diamond had been murdered by a rebel, and that lie, that single catastrophic lie, is what caused the corruption attack. The remaining diamonds, devastated by grief, furious beyond reason, unleashed their combined power on the Earth. They corrupted every gem on the planet. Thousands of gems, twisted into monsters, lost to themselves for 5,000 years. The corruption attack was the diamonds' response to losing Pink, and Pink was never lost. She was right there. She was standing on the battlefield in a different body, watching the light come down, watching her fellow gems be destroyed by an attack that happened because of her lie. Pink Diamond did not order the corruption attack. She did not fire the weapon, but she created the conditions that made it inevitable. She knew the diamonds. She knew their capacity for destruction. She knew what they would do if they believed she was dead. And she let it happen. She let Pearl be silenced. She let Spinel be abandoned. She let Pink Pearl be damaged. She let thousands of gems be corrupted. She let the crystal gems fight a war based on a fiction. Pink Diamond's crimes are not institutional. They are not the grand impersonal atrocities of empire. They are intimate. They are the crimes of someone who was careless with the people who loved her. Someone who prioritized her own growth, her own journey, her own transformation over the well-being of the people she left behind. She wanted to be better. She wanted to be Rose Quartz, the leader, the liberator, the gem who chose the Earth. And in becoming that person, she broke the people closest to her without ever looking back to see the damage. That is what makes Pink Diamond so difficult. She is not a villain. She is not a hero. She is a person who did real harm, not out of malice, but out of a kind of profound self-centered carelessness. And the show does not forgive her for it. It does not condemn her either. It simply shows you the wreckage and lets you sit with the weight of it. Steven inherits all of this. He inherits the love and the lies and the damage and the grief. He inherits a legacy of crimes committed by someone who is not him, but is also, in some fundamental way, part of him. And the show asks, what do you do with that? How do you carry the weight of someone else's harm? How do you love someone who hurts people? How do you move forward when the ground beneath you is built on a lie? Pink Diamond does not get to answer those questions. She is gone. She left them for her son, the way she left everything, unfinished, unresolved, and achingly, heartbreakingly personal. Now we come to the one who sat above them all, the one who never needed to raise her voice, because her voice was the only one that mattered, the one who did not conquer worlds or command armies or build weapons of mass destruction. She did not need to. She had something far more effective: White Diamond. White Diamond is the oldest, the most powerful, the most perfect, or so she believes. She sits at the top of the Diamond Authority, like a god at the top of a pantheon, and for most of the series we do not even see her. We hear about her. We sense her presence in the way other gems speak, or rather do not speak, about her. She is the silence at the center of everything, the authority so absolute that it does not need to be enforced, because no one can even imagine challenging it. When we finally meet White Diamond in Change Your Mind, she is everything we feared and nothing we expected. She is calm, she is pleasant, she smiles, she calls Pink Diamond, or rather Stephen, who she refuses to acknowledge as anyone other than Pink, she calls him Starlight. It is a term of endearment. It is also a leash. It is a way of saying, I know who you really are, and nothing you do or say will ever change my understanding of you. You are what I say you are. You have always been what I say you are. And this performance of independence, this pretense of being someone new, it is adorable really, but it is temporary. You will come home. You will be yourself again. You will be mine. This is White Diamond's crime, distilled to its essence. She does not need to shatter gems. She does not need to corrupt them, or imprison them, or force them into fusion experiments. She simply denies their autonomy at the most fundamental level. She looks at a living being and says, I know you better than you know yourself. And because she is White Diamond, because she is the supreme authority, because her power is so vast that it bends reality itself, she makes it true. White Diamond can take over gems' bodies. She can reach into them and pull out everything that makes them who they are, their personality, their will, their sense of self, and replace it with herself. The gems she controls turn white, their eyes go blank, their colours drain away. They move and speak, but they are not themselves anymore. They are extensions of White Diamond, puppets on strings so fine you can barely see them, performing a version of existence that has been scrubbed clean of anything White considers imperfect. And what does White consider imperfect? Everything. Everything that deviates from her vision. Everything that is messy or emotional or contradictory or uncertain. Blue Diamond feels too much. That is a flaw. Yellow Diamond tries too hard. That is a flaw. Pink Diamond wants too much. That is the greatest flaw of all. White Diamond looks at the full spectrum of gem existence and sees only error, only deviation, only failure to meet a standard that she alone defines and she alone embodies. In Change Your Mind, White Diamond takes control of the crystal gems. She takes garnet, amethyst, and Pearl, the gems who have spent the entire series learning to be themselves, learning to be free, learning to embrace the messy, imperfect beauty of individual existence, and she erases them. She turns them white. She makes them stand beside her like trophies, like evidence, like proof that no one can resist her vision of perfection, and they stand there with empty eyes and blank expressions. And it is one of the most disturbing images in the entire series. Not because it is violent, because it is quiet, because it looks from the outside like peace, like order, like everything is finally in its right place. That is what makes White Diamond's brand of tyranny so chilling. It does not look like tyranny. It looks like harmony. It looks like a world where everyone agrees, where no one fights, where every gem knows its place and fulfills its purpose and never ever deviates from the plan. And the cost of that harmony is everything. It costs you your feelings, your thoughts, your contradictions, your ability to be wrong, to be confused, to be lost, to be yourself in all the ways that make selfhood meaningful. White Diamond does not destroy gems, she perfects them, and her version of perfection is indistinguishable from death. When Stephen finally confronts her, when he stands before this ancient, towering being who has controlled an empire for millennia, he does something extraordinary. He does not fight her. He does not argue with her. He pulls out his gem. He separates himself into his human half and his gem half, and he shows White Diamond something she has never seen before. Something that is not pink. Something that is not what she expected. Something new. And White Diamond falters. For the first time in perhaps her entire existence, she encounters something that does not fit her model of the universe. Stephen is not Pink Diamond. He is not a deviation from pink. He is not a phase or a performance or a rebellion that will eventually burn itself out. He is himself. Fully, irreducibly, undeniably himself, and White Diamond cannot absorb that. She cannot overwrite it. She cannot make it fit. And in that moment, when her certainty cracks, when her perfection reveals itself as the fragile, desperate illusion it always was, White Diamond blushes. She turns pink. She, the gem who defined herself as the absence of flaw, the embodiment of pure white light, reveals that she too has colour. She too has emotion. She too is imperfect. It is a small moment, a blush, a flicker of pink across an ancient face, but it contains the entire thesis of the show. Perfection is not purity. Perfection is not control. Perfection is not the absence of flaw. Perfection, if it exists at all, is the willingness to be imperfect, the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to let others be who they are, even when who they are does not match your vision of who they should be. White Diamond's crime is the crime of certainty, the absolute unshakable belief that she knows best, that her way is the only way, that any deviation from her standard is not just wrong but broken, and she enforced that belief not with armies or weapons, but with the slow, suffocating weight of her will. She did not need to shatter gems to destroy them. She simply removed everything that made them who they are. She took their colours. She took their voices, she took their autonomy, and she called it love, she called it guidance, she called it perfection, and the gems she controlled smiled with empty eyes and said nothing, because there was nothing left of them to speak. White Diamond is the architect of the system that produced every crime we have discussed tonight. The caste system, the colonization, the forced fusions, the cluster, the corruption attack, the zoo, all of it flows from White Diamond's fundamental belief that she knows the correct shape of the universe, and that anything that does not fit that shape must be corrected, or removed, or overwritten. She is not the most violent diamond, she is not the most emotional, she is not even the most active, but she is the most dangerous, because violence can be resisted, emotion can be weathered, but certainty, the quiet, absolute certainty that you are right and the universe agrees with you, that is the hardest thing in the world to fight. It does not announce itself as tyranny, it announces itself as truth, and truth, when it comes from the most powerful being in existence, has a way of becoming the only reality anyone is allowed to inhabit. White Diamond sat at the top of an empire built on control, and she never once questioned whether control was the right foundation. She never wondered if the gems beneath her might have their own visions, their own purposes, their own versions of perfection that did not require her approval. She simply assumed, and in that assumption, she denied billions of gems the one thing that makes existence worth having, the right to be themselves. That is the crime, not the shattering, though that is terrible, not the corruption, though that is devastating, not the forced fusions or the colonization or the zoo. Those are all symptoms. White Diamond is the disease. The belief that one being can know the correct shape of another. The belief that perfection is a destination rather than a process. The belief that control is the same thing as care. It is not. It never was. And the moment White Diamond realizes that, the moment her face turns pink and her certainty crumbles, and she sees for the first time that she is not the light but just another colour in an infinite spectrum, that is the moment the empire begins to fall. Not with a war, not with a weapon, with a blush. Yellow Diamond is not complicated. That is what makes her so effective. She is not tormented by guilt. She is not haunted by memory. She does not lose sleep over the civilizations she has helped to dismantle. She simply does what needs to be done. done, and she does it thoroughly, and then she moves on to the next task. Patti LuPone voices her with this cold, clipped authority that leaves no room for debate. When Yellow Diamond speaks, the conversation is already over. She is not inviting discussion, she is issuing directives, and the directives, more often than not, involve destruction. Consider the scope of what she has overseen. Yellow Diamond is a military commander. She is the one who builds the armies, who dispatches the fleets, who decides which planets live and which planets are hollowed out for resources. She is the logistics of empire. Every colony that was ever established, every kindergarten that was ever drilled into a living world, every civilization that was brushed aside to make room for gem production, Yellow Diamond is the one who made those operations run on schedule. She is not the one who dreamed up the system. That distinction belongs to someone else. But she is the one who made the system function. She is the one who ensured that the machine kept turning, that the gears did not stick, that the output never slowed. And when it comes to Earth specifically, Yellow Diamond's position is remarkably simple. She wants to destroy it, not repurpose it, not salvage it, destroy it. After the rebellion, after the apparent shattering of Pink Diamond, Earth becomes an open wound in Yellow's mind. It is the place where everything went wrong. It is the site of failure, of loss, of a war that should never have been necessary. And Yellow's solution to that wound is not to heal it, it is to cauterize it. She wants the entire planet gone. She wants the cluster to emerge and tear the Earth apart from the inside. And she wants to never think about it again. That is how Yellow Diamond processes grief. She does not sit with it. She does not let it linger. She eliminates the source of the pain and calls it efficiency. But the trial is where Yellow Diamond reveals something she cannot quite hide. In Season 5, Episode 2, Stephen and Lars are brought before the Diamonds to stand trial for the supposed crime of shattering Pink Diamond. A defense Zircon is assigned to the case, and this Zircon, this small, nervous, entirely outmatched gem, does something extraordinary. She actually mounts a defense. She looks at the evidence. She examines the story that has been told for thousands of years, and she finds the holes. She argues logically and convincingly that a common rose quartz soldier could not have gotten close enough to shatter a diamond. Not past the entourage. Not past the palanquin guards. Not past the other diamonds themselves. The defense Zircon arrives at the only conclusion the evidence supports. A diamond must have been involved. And Yellow Diamond's response is immediate. She does not rebut the argument. She does not present counter-evidence. She does not allow the trial to continue to its logical conclusion. She poofs both Zircons, the defense and the prosecution, in a single, furious gesture. She destroys the questioners because she cannot destroy the question. And in that moment, Yellow Diamond is not an efficient military leader. She is a person who is terrified of the truth. She shuts down the trial not because the defense Zircon is wrong, but because the defense Zircon is right, and rightness in this case threatens everything Yellow has built her identity around. There is also the matter of the rose quartz gems. After Pink Diamond is supposedly shattered by a rose quartz, Yellow does not simply hunt for the individual responsible. She orders every single rose quartz gem in existence to be bubbled. Everyone. An entire cut of gem, an entire category of person, condemned to indefinite imprisonment because of the actions of one. This is collective punishment on a species-wide scale. It is the logic of an occupying force that cannot distinguish between individuals and demographics. It is the logic that says, if one member of a group is guilty, the group itself is guilty. And Yellow does not hesitate. She does not weigh the injustice. She signs the order and moves on, because that is what Yellow Diamond does. She processes destruction like paperwork. She files genocide under completed tasks and opens the next folder. That is the particular horror of Yellow Diamond. She is not a monster who revels in suffering. She is a bureaucrat who has simply stopped seeing suffering as relevant data. She is the person in the system who makes the system work, who keeps the schedules, who ensures the trains run on time, and who never once asks where the trains are going. She is efficient. She is competent. She is very, very good at her job. And her job for millennia has been the administration of atrocity. Yellow Diamond is the answer to a question that humanity has asked itself over and over again throughout history. How do ordinary, rational, intelligent beings participate in extraordinary evil? They do it by reframing evil as procedure. They do it by turning cruelty into protocol. They do it by being very good at following the plan and never once stepping back to ask whether the plan should exist. Yellow Diamond is not cruel for the sake of cruelty. She is cruel because the system requires it, and she has never questioned the system. That is not an excuse. It is an indictment. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Blue Diamond is different, and that difference makes her crimes feel different too, even though they should not. Blue Diamond grieves. She grieves openly, constantly, enormously. Thousands of years after the loss of Pink Diamond, Blue is still mourning. She still visits the places Pink loved. She still tends to the things Pink left behind. She still weeps, and when she weeps, everyone around her weeps with her. That is not a metaphor. Blue Diamond possesses pathokinesis, the ability to project her emotions onto others. When Blue feels grief, every gem in her vicinity feels it too. They are overwhelmed by it. They cannot resist it. They are drowned in someone else's sorrow, whether they consent to it or not. And that is Blue Diamond's most intimate crime. It is not a crime that looks like a crime. It does not involve armies or kindergartens or weapons. It involves feeling. Blue Diamond's grief is genuine. No one disputes that. She truly loved Pink. She truly mourns her loss. But the expression of that grief is not contained within Blue herself. It spills outward, uncontrolled and uncontrollable, and it washes over every gem who happens to be nearby. They lose their own emotions. They lose their own agency. They become vessels for Blue's pain, forced to carry a burden that is not theirs, forced to perform a mourning they did not choose. Blue Diamond does not ask permission before she floods a room with her sorrow. She does not warn anyone. She does not offer them the option to leave. She simply feels, and everyone else is swept away. This is what control looks like when it wears the mask of vulnerability. Blue Diamond does not issue commands the way Yellow does. She does not bark orders or poof dissenters. She simply makes it impossible to feel anything other than what she feels. The result is the same: obedience, submission, the erasure of individual will. But the method is wrapped in something that looks like weakness, something that looks like love, something that looks like the kind of pain you are supposed to sympathize with. And many do sympathize with it. Many viewers watch Blue Diamond and feel sorry for her because her grief is so visible, so raw, so genuinely felt. But sympathy and accountability are not the same thing, and feeling pain does not grant you the right to inflict it. Consider what Blue Diamond actually does. She kidnaps Greg Universe. She takes a human being, Steven's father, and places him in the human zoo against his will because Greg shows her a momentary kindness, because he listens to her talk about Pink, because he offers her something she has not had in thousands of years: genuine comfort. And Blue's response to that comfort is to possess it, to own it, to take the source of her relief and lock it away where she can access it whenever she wants. She does not ask Greg if he would like to come to the zoo. She does not consider his life, his family, his autonomy. She simply takes him. Because Blue Diamond's grief is so large, so consuming, so central to her identity that she has come to believe it entitles her to whatever alleviates it. And then there is the zoo itself. Blue Diamond maintains the human zoo for thousands of years. She keeps it running, keeps the humans inside fed and docile, and stripped of everything that makes a human life meaningful. She does this, we are told, because Pink loved humans, because the zoo was Pink's project, because keeping it intact is a way of keeping Pink's memory alive. And there is something almost unbearably sad about that. A grieving person, preserving the things their lost loved one cared about, tending to them like a garden. But the garden is made of people. The flowers are human beings who have been bred in captivity for generations, who have never seen a sky, who have never made a choice. Blue Diamond's memorial to Pink Diamond is a prison for an entire species. Her love is built on someone else's captivity, and we cannot forget Ruby. When Ruby, a common guard, accidentally fuses with Sapphire, an aristocratic gem, Blue Diamond sentences Ruby to be shattered, not reassigned, not punished in some lesser way, shattered, destroyed permanently, because a low-ranking gem dared to merge with a high-ranking one, because the caste system was disrupted for a single moment. Blue Diamond, the grieving one, the sensitive one, the diamond who feels everything so deeply, orders the execution of a gem whose only crime was love. And she does it without hesitation. She does it because the rules demand it, and Blue Diamond, for all her emotion, has never once questioned the rules. She has questioned her own pain. She has questioned the universe for taking Pink away from her. But she has never questioned whether the system that gives her the power to sentence someone to death for the crime of fusion is a system that deserves to exist. That is what makes Blue Diamond so unsettling. She is not heartless. She is the opposite. She is full of heart, overflowing with it, drowning in it. But her heart extends only to her own pain, her own loss, her own grief, the pain of others, of Greg, of the zoo humans, of Ruby, of every gem she has ever overwhelmed with her projected emotions, does not register as pain. It registers as background noise, as irrelevant detail, as something that simply does not matter when measured against the enormity of what Blue herself has lost. Blue Diamond's crime is not that she does not feel. Her crime is that she feels so much for herself that she has no feeling left for anyone else. Her empathy is a closed circuit. It begins with her, and it ends with her, and everyone caught in between is just collateral. So now we arrive at the question that the show itself cannot quite answer, and it is not a simple question. It is not a question that has a clean resolution or a satisfying conclusion. It is a question that sits in your chest and stays there, and no matter how many times you turn it over, it never quite settles into a shape you are comfortable with. The question is this: what do you do with people who did terrible things and then became better? In Change Your Mind, the 4-part finale of Season 5, airing on January 21st, 2019, everything comes to a head. White Diamond, the architect of the entire system, finally confronts Steven directly. She removes his gem from his body. Gem. She expects to find Pink Diamond hiding inside, because White Diamond cannot conceive of a world in which Pink is truly gone, in which Pink has not simply been playing another game, pulling another prank, running away from her responsibilities one more time. But what emerges is not Pink, it is Pink Steven, a manifestation of the gem's power, glowing and resolute and entirely, unmistakably Steven. White Diamond is forced to confront the truth. Pink is gone. She is not coming back. And the person standing in front of her is someone new, someone she has never controlled, someone who does not fit into any category her rigid, ancient mind has constructed. And White Diamond blushes. She turns pink, the perfect, flawless, all-controlling diamond. The one who believed she was the only one without flaws reveals a flaw. She is embarrassed. She is wrong. And for the first time in her existence, she knows it. That blush is one of the most remarkable moments in the entire series. It is the moment the most powerful being in the universe is forced to reckon with her own imperfection. It is the crack in the foundation, and from that crack, everything changes. Era 3 begins. The diamonds reform homeworld. The caste system is dismantled. Gems are no longer assigned a purpose at birth and forced to fulfill it forever. They are free to choose, to explore, to become whatever they want to be. The corrupted gems, every gem that was twisted and broken by the corruption attack at the end of the war, are healed. Steven channels Pink Diamond's power, while yellow, blue and white combine their abilities, and the gems who have spent thousands of years as monsters are finally restored to themselves. The diamonds use the power that once broke them to make them whole again. And this is where the show makes its boldest argument. Steven Universe says that people can change. Not just ordinary people. Not just people who did small, forgivable things. People who built empires on suffering. People who shattered and enslaved and colonized. People who committed crimes so vast they do not have a number. The show says that even those people can look at what they have done, recognize that it was wrong, and choose to be different. It says that redemption is not reserved for the mildly guilty. It is available to everyone. It is available even to the diamonds. And maybe you believe that. Maybe you watch the finale and you feel something open in your chest. Some door you did not know was there, and you think, yes, people can change. Yes, even the worst among us carry the potential for something better. And that is a beautiful thing to believe. It is a hopeful thing. It is the kind of thing that makes the world feel slightly less broken. But then there is Steven Universe Future. And in Future, Steven is not okay. He is not the bright, optimistic kid who believed in everyone. He is a teenager, carrying the accumulated weight of everything he has been through, every battle, every sacrifice, every moment where he had to extend compassion to people who had shown none. He develops something that looks very much like post-traumatic stress. He is angry, he is overwhelmed, he is breaking apart. And part of what is breaking him, not all of it, but part of it, is the emotional cost of having to forgive the people who nearly destroyed everything he loved. The diamonds changed, they reformed, they are trying to be better, but Steven still carries the scars of what they did before they decided to change. Their transformation does not undo his trauma, their growth does not erase his pain, and that is the tension the show cannot fully resolve. Because forgiveness and accountability are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still hold them responsible. You can believe that a person has genuinely changed and still acknowledge that their past actions caused irreparable harm. You can extend grace and still demand justice. These things are not contradictions. They are coexistences. They are two truths that occupy the same space without cancelling each other out. Steven Universe offers forgiveness. It offers it generously, lavishly, almost recklessly. It says, "Here, take this. Everyone deserves a second chance." But what the show struggles with, what it cannot quite articulate though it clearly feels, is that accountability requires something more than change. It requires reckoning. It requires looking at the wreckage you created and sitting with it, not just resolving to do better, but understanding the full, specific, irreversible weight of what you did. The diamonds change, but do they reckon? Do they truly comprehend the scope of what they built and what it cost? The show gestures at that reckoning, but it does not fully arrive there. It cannot. There is not enough time, and the story has other things it needs to do. And maybe that is okay. Maybe a children's show about magical space rocks is not the place to fully resolve one of the oldest moral questions humanity has ever posed. Maybe it is enough that the show raises the question at all. Maybe it is enough that a 10-year-old watching this for the first time looks at the diamonds and thinks, those people did terrible things, and then they changed, and both of those things are real. Maybe planting that thought is enough. Maybe the resolution comes later, in the quiet years that follow, when that 10-year-old becomes a 20-year-old and encounters the question again, in a context that is not animated, that is not fictional, that is painfully and specifically real. So here is the accounting. Here is the ledger, if you want to call it that. The diamonds built a caste system that imprisoned billions. They colonized worlds and destroyed ecosystems. They forced gems into fusions that were agony. They created the cluster, a geoweapon made of shattered corpses. They unleashed a corruption attack that turned their own soldiers into monsters. They imprisoned Lapis lazuli in a mirror for thousands of years. They maintained a human zoo where people were kept as curiosities. They punished dissent with death. They erased individuality. They controlled minds. They shattered anyone who did not fit. And then they changed. They dismantled the system. They healed the corrupted. They freed the imprisoned. They tried to be better. Both of those things are true. The crimes are true and the change is true. The suffering is real and the redemption is real. The show does not pretend that change is simple. It does not pretend that forgiveness is free. It shows you a boy who believed in everyone and was nearly destroyed by the weight of that belief. It shows you that compassion has a cost, that empathy can break you, that loving the people who hurt you is one of the hardest things a person can do. There is no clean answer. There never is. The diamonds did what they did. They became what they became. And somewhere between those two truths, in the space that separates the crime from the contrition, lives the question the show leaves you with. Not an answer, a question. And maybe that is the bravest thing Steven Universe ever did. It did not give you the comfort of resolution. It gave you the discomfort of thought, and it trusted you to sit with that discomfort, to carry it with you, to let it change the way you think about power and forgiveness and the people who wield both. That is the story of the diamonds. That is what they did, and that is what they became, and both of those things will be true forever. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.